Welcome to the Eyes Up Mindset podcast, where we explore what it means to grow daily and find our best in every aspect of life.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Eyes Up Mindset podcast. I'm John Shirkey here with my friend, my co-host, Jamie Wagner. Jamie, excited for the show today. The conversation is a little bit impromptu, but I think it turned out awesome. And this is a guy that I could talk to for hours. You know, we say that a lot about some of our guests, and we did spend a ton of time catching up with him. But Coach Jeff Mumm, longtime head football coach in Thief River Falls, Minnesota. I used to live there, used to live there with me. Tell us a little bit about kind of him and our conversation today.
Coach Mumm has had the incredible fortune to be in a single place for a long time, and that he mentions it, that a lot of young coaches aren't looking to settle in these small communities, and one of the things that I love about it is he's not only been the head coach, he's developed a leadership class and leadership curriculum for their school and their program, and he's had this opportunity to impact so many lives around what it looks like to live rightly, right? Not just as an athlete, but in everything we do. And he doesn't say this out loud, but one of the things that kept coming across to me in the interview is when you do it with consistency, when you live that way, people just don't really ask questions. They don't, you might be able to do some things and get away with some things that other people are like, man, that's crazy. Why are you doing that? Why are you opening yourself up? Well, I trust who I am enough, and that people have seen me do it enough and with consistency, that it doesn't matter the X's and O's. It doesn't matter how you do it. It just matters that you do it over and over and over again. And I think that's something that Coach Mumm has exemplified in his time in Thief River. And what we hope to do on this podcast is to say, hey, however we're getting at it, it's kind of the same thing, but it's always good and it's always valuable. And he gave us a bunch of good stuff today.
Excited to share it. Jamie, I didn't even ask you. I went right to the bottom line. How you doing today? How you been?
We're doing great. It was a great conversation. It's uplifting. Good to connect with great people. And it's like 44 degrees in Minnesota in December. So there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I know. My wife, Hannah, said the other day, like, hey, so our first December in Montana, it's awesome. It's like 55 degrees on the weekend. It was fantastic. But no, it's good. I'm glad to catch up with you as always. Incredible episode today with Coach Mumm. He's just a cool dude, and you can hang out with him forever. And we did, and we're blessed because of it. Coach Mumm. Coach Jeff Mumm, thank you for joining the Eyes Up Mindset podcast. I think I know I can speak for Jamie too, as it's truly a pleasure to have you on today, and excited about our conversation.
Well, thank you very much. I've been around a long time, and I tell you what, when you told me that I was going to get the opportunity to do this, it was just like a rookie again, just starting off with coaching and being all nervous and stuff. And so it's that's a good thing that I can still get this excited about this, and watching what you guys do and stuff. You guys are doing phenomenal work, and thank you. And I don't know, I'm very honored to be a part of this. So thank you for asking.
You bet. So you mentioned you've been around a few years.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about kind of your coaching journey and coaching, teaching, kind of where you're at, those sorts of things. Because some people are absolutely going to know who you are. But believe it or not, Coach, we just got our end of the year podcast results in 15 different countries. People are listening to our podcast, which blew my mind. But so just give us a little background as far as like where you're at, how you got into coaching and teaching, and kind of a little bit about your journey.
So is Wisconsin one of them countries? No, just kidding. Well, no, it started, when you look back, you think about who influenced you at a point. I remember we had two phenomenal coaches, but two phenomenal teachers when I was in high school. I was from a small high school in Clayton, Wisconsin. And those type of guys, usually don't come around or stick around in small schools. It's a stepping stone for them. But I was blessed to have Ed Langham and Steve Russ, and they challenged us, and it was just a whole different mentality way back then with the weightlifting. And so for me, it's like I always wanted to get into education and coaching. And so I went to college, and I was assistant football coach for 2 years at Superior High School in Superior. I got to work under Larry Hoff, who was in the Hall of Fame there. And then I applied it for Thief River Falls, 24 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. And I think the only reason they hired me is because I might have been the only guy that applied for the job. As when I got the job, I started looking into, their records and their past. And, I kind of got all caught up in that stuff. Like, they're not winning, what am I going to do? But it was a great place to come into, because whatever I did, it was okay, because they weren't winning. So a lot of trial and error and stuff like that. So, my coaching background was 2 years as an assistant coach in Superior, 2 years as a head coach in for track, for the men's for the boys track team, then coming to Thief River Falls in 1985, and I've been here ever since. So it's been my goal was to get some experience and get back to God's country, Wisconsin, and I'm still here. The grass isn't any greener anywhere else, and it's just been a wonderful place to teach and coach and raise my family. Both my kids have graduated from here, and it's just been a remarkable run. So yeah. So
we talk a lot about community and how we want to pour into the communities that we're in and we're invested in. And you talk about maybe at the beginning thinking, hey, I was going to get back to Wisconsin. I was going to get back to blasphemy, God's country. But Thief River is, as far northwest, more or less, in Minnesota that you can get. And what about that place, and what about your role and your impact in that place has really allowed you to establish roots? Because I think about, like you said, not many people are doing this and stand put in small rural communities. And we really have a heart for that, because we both grew up in these small towns that had these amazing people kind of pouring into us. What about your experience there has tied you to that place? What about the community has ingratiated you or given you this hope to say, this is where I want to be and raise a family?
It's a great question and great comments about that. When I can remember when my dad was up here. My dad passed away in 1994, and I miss him all the time. But we played Fergus Falls, and Fergus Falls was loaded. Coach Stuvey had one of those teams that, they were just better than we were. And I remember I told my dad, I said, I got to get out of here. I said, I don't know if I can win here. And it was homecoming, and Mr. Lynn Dyer always had the staff and anybody in our district that wanted to come to his place after homecoming for a gathering. You had a fire down by the river. And I remember on Sunday, when my mom and dad left, my dad said, you know what, there's really good people here. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, everybody that I met at that place, the teachers and coaches from the elementary to the junior high to the high school, they're all invested. And my dad was a business guy, he had a business degree and stuff. And he just said, this is a good place. You just need to give it time. And being 24 years old, I wanted to win right now. That was important to me. I look back, when I get a chance to speak and stuff and talk to younger coaches, that it doesn't happen right away. Believe me, because my first year we were 0-8 and we scored 9 total points the whole year. And we weren't good between the 20s. We weren't good anywhere. And it was just, but the community let me coach. They let me make mistakes. And yeah, there is some criticism, because it maybe, it took a little longer than 2 to 3 years, which I hoped. And, once I figured out that, you don't start from the top, you start from the bottom. And there was a tennis coach that spoke at the Nike Coach of the Year clinic one year. And he talked about taking a pyramid and starting from the top and working your way down. And he goes, I use this with my kids. He said, so I tell them, so you take the pyramid, divide it into 5 or 6 sections, and you say, okay, put down your best skills that you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Then he said, now you take the pyramid, turn it upside down, and that's how you figure out your practice plan. You go from worst to best, because everybody wants to work, everybody wants to work on their best skills. So, in Thief River Falls, it wasn't, we were losing kids. And so we started to, we worked from the bottom up, changing our junior high program, getting things consistent, getting coaches there. And once, I think once you start that, when the community sees the, the improvement and all the things that, that you're doing. And I remember Larry Hoff said, if you're going to get fired from a job, or you're going to lose the respect of the, especially the parents of the community, is number one, don't let them ever think that you're not working very hard. And I said, well, how do you show that? They said, they'll just know. They'll know if you're working hard. And I think that's one thing that I would give myself credit for is I continue to work hard, and nobody's ever going to outwork me. They may beat us from time to time, but nobody's going to outwork us. But the community, and especially the parents, and I think that's a lot of the stuff that I did with our parents involved with the football program. I know some coaches they're afraid of the parents, and you can't be. They're vital. If you don't have them, you're not going to be there very long. And so when that started to fall into place, the community and what we did, especially outside of football, they embraced it. I don't know if they've all embraced me, but we had a good thing going, and it's just been, I don't know, it's just been a great place to live, and it's a good system. We've had great superintendents and great principals, so we've been very, very fortunate. So,
and there's so many questions I have already, but so Coach, you talked about Thief River having great people and being a place. I lived in Thief River for 5 years, my wife and I, and I tell you this every chance I get. One of my biggest regrets was not getting to coach with you. You left, I think, the year before we moved there, and then now you're back, helping out a little bit. And obviously, I'm not there anymore. But one of the things that when my wife and I go to a different community, is there a golf course for me? And what's the high school football program like? Those are my two things. Other than that, I'm pretty easy. I can be flexible, right?
Okay.
And when we started thinking about moving to Thief River, I started to come across your stuff. You had a whole library. I think it was back in the time of there wasn't a website really. It was just like this document. It was like 1,000 pages, it seemed like, but it wasn't that many, but it seemed like it was huge. And it was all this motivational character. It's leadership. It's about how you live your life sort of stuff. And I was super excited. And then obviously, disappointed to not get to work with you as much, but having gotten to know you, I love that that's your background. And I think the biggest question that I have is, where did that come from? Where did that start? Because I think you started doing that at a time where even today in 2020, that kind of stuff isn't standard in high school athletic programs. It just isn't. Some coaches do it, some people don't. And so what sorts of things were you, engaged with or learning from that made you say, this is a vital part of what I'm going to do? And maybe what are some of those things that you were doing then and even now?
Well, you've opened up the door. We could be going for 2 days here right now, but and again, when you came to our community in 2010, I got out, and I was feeling great. Our program was in great shape. I can thank Mitch Album for that, because every Sunday after church, I'd go to the school, and I would first take care of all the school stuff that I needed to, and then I would start, getting our stuff ready for our coaches meeting, because we always met on Sunday afternoons. And in the Minneapolis Tribune, there was an article in the parade section, and I don't know if anybody realized what that. I never read the parade section, so it fell out of the paper. I grabbed it, and I was like, well, I might as well scroll through it. And I think it was on the back page, and it was an article written by Mitch Album, and it was called "The Coach Who Walked Away," and it was written about Lloyd Carr when he was coaching at Michigan. Mm-hmm. And I love Mitch Album's book. I haven't read all of them, but I'm pretty close to reading all of them, and so I read the article, and it was a good article about why about why Lloyd Carr got out. He had a successful season, and it got to the very end, and Mitch Album asked Lloyd Carr, he said, so if you were to give advice, what would it be? And Coach Carr said, if you can get out when you love it, you're one of the lucky ones. And I just sat there and I thought about that. I was like, yeah, I've been head coach for 26 years. I've invested 26 wonderful years into the program. And I think I wasn't under any pressure at all. I mean, in all the years that I've coached, I had 2 letters, and 2 letters that looked like they were written by 3rd graders, because I think they tried to write it like that, and it didn't make any sense. But I kept them, and I'll share a story on that one later because it was pretty good. But we had a couple coaches in our district that were going through some parental stuff, and they were devastated. And I was like, you know what? If I get out right now, I'm getting out at the top. I love it. We got like 30 some seniors where our program's in good shape. So it was going into game 4. So I went into Mr. Biermeyer and I said, when the season's over, I'm gonna hang it up. And he goes, yeah, right. I said, no. He goes, what's wrong? I go, nothing. I said, I love it. And he goes, well, why are you gonna get out? And I said, because I love it. And he said, doesn't make any sense, Jeff. And he goes, you know what? You think about it, and we'll get back, at the end of the year. And this is how the relationships they build with kids. So every Wednesday, our captains will go out for dinner. They'd pick the place to go on to eat. And I always said my captains, and we always involved a couple other kids from the team, but they were like my assistant coaches. So we'd go over the pro, I always call it the good, the bad, the ugly. And we would cover things that we needed to, and nothing was ever going to leave that that dinner. And it was a good place to eat too, except when they started wanting to go to Joe DiMaggio's Red Lake Falls. I said, guys, so we got to keep it in Thief River Falls. We can't be driving 20 some miles away to go someplace to eat. So I gave the 4 captains that night a letter on my resignation, and they looked at me, and I remember 2 of them started crying. And they said, what did we do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. I love you guys. They said, well, why are you getting out? And I said, so I explained it to them, and we were all good with that. And I said, you know what? I said, there's only you 4 guys that know, myself, Mr. Biermeyer, maybe because he's gonna make me think about it. And then I said, the prowler in the sky. That's all that know about it. If I ever hear anything about it, then then I've lost your trust as captains. They never said a word. They never said a word till the end of the year. So I mean, the stuff that our kids do, the relationships. And I go back, John, to when I didn't want to leave Wisconsin. I wanted to stay in that Superior area. Yeah. And I remember Coach Hoff said, what are your goals? And I said, I want to be a head football coach. He goes, well, you're not going to do it here because I'm going to be here for a long time and I'm not going to get fired. And he goes, and it looks like there's not a whole lot of jobs in Northwest Wisconsin. So I was substitute teaching. I was a head track coach, and I don't want a substitute teacher anymore. That, they don't get paid enough money to be substitute teachers, even back when I was doing it. So I applied for a job in Morgan Park, Minnesota, called the Bethany Crisis Shelter. And it was a home run by Lutheran Social Services, and it was a residential place. And I think at that time we had like 20 people that would hold. And it was a full-time job. I'm like, well, it can't be that bad. So I applied for the job, and I got an interview. And I remember the lady said, she goes, you spelled counselor wrong. I'm like, yeah, well, I tried. I was a FIAD teacher, so I didn't spell it very well. But they gave me the job. And I had no idea what I was getting into. I was getting into a place where they had 20 to 24 kids that nobody wanted. They couldn't function in school, couldn't function at their family. It was a placement for 30, 60, 90 days. Some days we held them for 120. So I got stuck with a bunch of kids that nobody in college ever told us how to work with. That was somebody else's responsibility. Now I had a whole house full of them. And it was intimidating because they were street smart. And I could tell you some unbelievable stories that happened there that shaped me, but they were so smart that they knew exactly when I would go around and check, bed check, because I always did the night, night shifts. So I could coach and stuff, but they knew exactly when I did it. So I do it. They'd all go out their windows, and so I got in trouble for that. I got in trouble for a bunch of stuff. And then, so I was bored at night, and I started a journal. And so the kids would write in a journal, and I would write back to them because I wanted something to do at night besides doing bed checks and sit there and do nothing except, like be a security person. But it taught me that every single kid in that place was a great kid, a great human being. They just had a bunch of junk going on in their life, and from home, and they were kids that nobody wanted. And that, I tell you what, when I get to speak, I always tell the new teachers that you need to work at a place like Bethany Crisis Shelter. You need to be stuck with a group of kids that you can develop trust with, because they don't trust anybody because no one's ever given them a time of day. And so to me, that has been the biggest influence on teaching and coaching is if you don't get to know the kids, you're missing out. I always say, don't miss a moment. And there's a lot of teachers and coaches that they miss them. They miss them all, just the little things. And so the Bethany Crisis Shelter, to me, I think shaped me as to where I am today, because every kid's important. And even if they do mess up, you have to be there. Like, one of my rules was, if they got caught doing something bad on the weekend, let's say drinking, I said, we had our school rules and our team rules, but I had to be the first person to know as a school official. So when kids knocked on my door on a Saturday or Sunday, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And they say, Coach, you know what, we did this. And I said, okay, thank you. And I said, if that's the biggest mistake you ever make in life, you know what, we're okay. We're going to get through it. And so that was that trust, that trust part again. And don't give up on kids. So that, I know I went on and on about it. I'm sorry about that, but it's the Bethany Crisis Shelter was a turning point in my life, because if I was going to function there, I needed to get to know those kids, and they had to trust me.
And I'm a teacher. We both, all three of us are coaches in some capacity, and we understand the value of relationships and trust. Mm-hmm. And what I see as being the big takeaway from that, and what I know that you've done, and what John was talking about when he kind of introed that question about this, it felt like 1,000 pages of leadership and character and this sort of stuff, is that not only did you build trust with the kids over time, but you built trust with the community and the parents to allow you to build kind of character education into the system. Because I know that you have a leadership class and you've done those things. I know that that's not always possible in every community, because I just, in my experience, I've tried to do some things like that as well, where we were developing character education or leadership type classes, and it met with resistance, because people are like, well, you who are you to say this thing, And one of the things that has to happen in order to do that is to develop that trust that you're talking about, and to have those meaningful relationships, and for people to see you be consistent in those type of behaviors. And you have been talking about this stuff, like John said, way before anybody else was. And that experience at Bethany Crisis Shelter allowed you to see the value in it. What are the things that you've taught that other people have come back to you and said, this was so crucial, this was so important, this thing changed me? Because you've had that opportunity on kids' life. Because I'm 35 and I've had kids come back to me and say that, I taught for 9 years, where you taught for a lot longer than that. What are some things where people have come back to you and said, Coach, this thing, you doing this thing made such a huge difference?
Great points. And 99.9% it's not about the game of football. Yeah. It isn't the games we won. It isn't the game we lost. I mean, yeah, at some point when you sit down, you talk about it. It's that they were so proud to be a Prowler football player, with what we did in the community, what we did in the school, and on Thursdays, we used to wear this goofy looking royal blue shirt that had a big gold dot on it. And it was our gold dot day. And on the back in real small letters said Prowler football, do what's right at all times. And so during that day, you need to get recognized by doing, going out of your way and making somebody else's day special. I said, we're picking a day, it's Thursday, but you need to do it all the time. And so Thursdays was great, and some people, some coaches say, well, our kids will never wear those shirts. I'm like, well, you know what they did in Thief River Falls, grades 9 through 12. On Fridays, we do our traditional, our game day stuff, and the captains would always pick the dress, whether we're going to wear we had a pullover top that we had, or our jerseys, and as the jerseys have become a little bit, they're different than back in the past. Before they were a bit loose, and all you put them on, you can hardly get them off. So, if you're a 340-pound lineman, those jerseys are like skin tight on you. Something like going, Coach, I'd rather have, can I wear shoulder pads at school? Like, no, you can't. And, so the jerseys are a lot different. So, so we took into consideration that, or so our kids, would do that. So our dress up days weren't, and our kids always had to wear khaki pants or shorts. And the question is, well, what if they don't? Well, they just do. And, we've got guys like Trevor Swanson in our community and Jared Colin, and I can name a bunch more. And I'm sorry, I'm just naming those two, but those two have been instrumental. If our kids need anything, like when I go through my FIAD stuff and coaching stuff, I always say, I promise you this, if you need something, we can get it for you. We had a mother just crying her eyes out a couple falls ago because her son needed tennis shoes. And she said her son came back and said, Coach Mumm said, I can get a pair of shoes and I need them, Mom. So she called me up and she told me what size, and I called her back and I said, what color do you want? And she goes, seriously, you're asking what color I want? She goes, this is unbelievable. And I said, well, next time you go to Purdy's, give the guy in there a great big hug. So, the community plays a vital part in all of that stuff. I kind of lost my train of thought here because I'm jumping around here a little bit. So going back to, just the community part, and, like after games, we clean the locker room. Every kid had a responsibility. And I can remember getting this wonderful letter from the AD from Richfield and said, the locker room, these kids come in carrying these buckets of brooms and cleaning stuff. And I remember we're at the Alaris Center for the section championship game, and the guys met us at the door, and they go, why are you guys bringing all this cleaning stuff? They said, well, we clean the locker room. When we're done, they go, what do you mean you clean a locker room? I said, well, that's what we do. And they go, we've been doing this for whatever. We've never seen anybody doing it. I said, well, come on down and join us. And, we didn't know we had, they had carpeted locker rooms because we didn't have vacuum cleaners, but they brought vacuum cleaners for us. But I think the best story on the locker rooms where we're in Hibbing and we clean the locker room, and all of a sudden the two custodians came up and said, who's your head coach? And so the coaches pointed at me, and I'm like, geez, what are we doing? They came over and said, our locker room's spotless. We have nothing to do. I said, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to do anything. And so come over here, grab a sub sandwich and, get paid for, eating with the Prowler football team. So, I look back at all the things that we did, from the locker rooms to the dot days to the stuff that we did with elderly homes, and I can go on and on and on. That involvement in community when they see good things are happening. And so when the kids come back and say, they talk about all the things we did away from the football field and how it carries over into their life and then what they're doing with their own kids right now. So I love that part. We talk about football a little bit too, but it's all the other stuff that we did that, was so wonderful.
Where did all that other stuff come from, Coach? Was it just you came up with an idea and you said, yeah, that sounds really good, we're going to do that, we're going to serve our community? Or was that something that, your high school did, or your college, where did that stuff come from? Because there are so many things, and I was only a small part of it, but just so many things in that community, between barbecues and car washes and service stuff and all sorts of different things that are synonymous with your time with Thief River football.
Yeah. We used to, and another thing too that I really, really liked was, our freshmen were adopted by a senior. And so we would draw names out. So if I was, obviously I'd be a senior and you'd be the younger guy, but I would have you during the fall, and you were responsible for meeting with them a couple of times a week. We had pizza dinners, and then the seniors and the freshmen would either go to a UND or a Bison football game. But we always took our kids to a Gopher game and a Viking game back in the day. And that was always fun. It was a great time to bond and things like that. But, it goes back to the relationships, goes back to Bethany. But if I was going to win in Thief River Falls when I got here, I needed to get all the kids out that were going to make us successful. I needed to get the hockey guys. I needed to get the basketball. I needed to get the rest. I needed those guys to be there, and they weren't playing. And so, when I met with the parents and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And it's like, well, they're not winning. And there's still that little bit, well, I'm going to save my son because he's going to be in the NBA. He's going to be in the National Hockey League and stuff like that. You're always going to get that. But when the kids come, once things started to roll, kids that never played before wanted to be a part of what we were doing, not the football part, but everything else that we were doing. And I always had a philosophy too, is that if you and I played the same position and we were about equal, then you and I would decide how we're going to rotate. We had our starters, then we had our rotation players, then we had our backups. And I remember one game we had our whatever tackle was playing. I remember Charlie Cornell said, this is crunch time. Do you think he should be in there? And I said, are you going to go tell him that he shouldn't be in there? We're going to take him out. I said, that would crush him. I said, those guys decided on how they're going to rotate in, and we're okay. and we were okay. I mean, the kids bought in, they knew where they were. And so, yeah, there was some trial and error, but I needed to develop things beyond football that made it fun for the kids and something they wanted to be a part of. Then we worked hard. I don't care what anybody says. We worked harder in practice than anybody. We were nonstop, and there was expectations in the weight room. If you weren't playing a fall or a winter and spring sport, then you needed to be with us. And there was a 3-strike rule that I had with the parents, but just the stuff that we did away from the football field is, I think, the reason why we were successful is because kids want to be a part of it.
So the thing that keeps jumping out to me, that when you're talking about these things, the different stories or examples or, approaches to how you were doing it, the thing that jumps out to me is giving the kids ownership, getting them to buy in. I mean, from the, trusting your captains with the resignation letter to saying, you guys are going to decide how we're going to rotate and how you're going to sub in. And we're going to give you that responsibility with the expectation that you're going to step up to that and you're going to meet those expectations. Like, it wasn't, hey, I don't want to wear khakis. Well, that's the expectation. It's still up to you. Yeah. Right. So maybe just talk a little bit about that and your philosophy and maybe that's totally unintentional and that's just natural to you, or is that something that you were specific about saying, hey, we're going to give these kids the responsibility and accountability for their own program, and it's just going to build from there?
Yeah, great question again too. Is when we would meet in the spring, the senior football players or anybody that want to come up for football as a senior. So the seniors would always design their own T-shirt. They would pick their word for the year. Sometimes they'd pick their song for the year, because my favorite song is 100 Years and by Five for Fighting. It's amazing that, and I still get kids say, hey, that song was, I'll get a message. Hey, coach, 100 Years was on, it brought me back to the good days and stuff. And so go back to your question again, because I was thinking about something else. So, and I'm not getting that old. So, okay, come back with it again. You're the main part that you were just talking about.
Well, so the question is, how do you build in, the buy-in for the kids and say, hey, we're going to give you the responsibility in all these things and then hold you to a high standard.
Okay. I've always believed that, it doesn't, kids always want discipline, and kids always want something that, that they're held accountable for. Even in my classes, I always tell my kids, you may not like me, and that's okay, but I'm going to treat you just like my son or daughter. I'm going to talk to you the same way I talk to them. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to love you. I'm going to hug you, even though we can't even get close to them right now. Right. But our seniors would get together, they design their T-shirts, their word for the year. And then they would also, besides their state high school league rules and high school rules, they would have their rules that they wanted, team rules. Okay. And they could be 5 or they could be 10, but the seniors developed those. And I found out when players develop their own rules, they don't break them. And if they do break them, it really kind of tells you where you're at. So the accountability of the T-shirts that every football player in grades 6 through 12 wore, the word for the year and things, it was theirs. And we had the banner made up with the year, with the year and the word for the year and the saying for the year, and that was theirs. And just I always wanted us to look good. I always told them, I said, hey, when we leave any place that we play, number one, we're there to win. If we don't win, we're still going to walk off the field and people are going to say, hey, that's a bunch of classy kids. If we eat anywhere, we're going to clean the entire restaurant. So we leave, they're going to say, you know what? Those Thief River kids are pretty good kids. And we all look the same. We didn't look like we just rolled out of a ditch. Our kids could wear hats, but it had to say Prowlers. Those things, like these are expectations that I really think we need to have, because we're representing Thief River Falls and we're representing your parents. And honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of times where kids went out of their way and just didn't follow what we were trying to do. And if it was like, okay, so what are we going to do? So I'm going to make it better. Going back to kids too, I remember an overtime game when I think our program really turned the corner, was 1991 or 92, we were playing Crookston, and Thief River hadn't beaten Crookston in 100 years. And we were dominating the game, and then boom, fumble, they score. All of a sudden, the game's tied. We go to overtime. So Crookston, gets the ball first, score, kicks the extra point. Okay, all right. So we get the ball, we score in the very first play, call timeout. Now walk in the huddle, and I said, what do you guys want to do? You want to kick the extra point and go to overtime number 2, or go for 2 and win the game? And I said, let's take a vote. Well, there was 10 votes. I said, let's go for 2, and 1 vote that said to kick the extra point. Because he goes, well, what if we don't get the 2? I said, well, we lose. He goes, well, I think we should kick the extra point. And I said, well, it's 10-1 vote. You lost. And I said, all right, guys, you call the play. And I walked out of the huddle. And I remember a couple of our coaches were like, what play did you call? And I go, I don't know. I didn't call any play. What do you mean you didn't call a play? I said, I didn't call a play. They go, well, you have to call a play. And I said, it's their game. And they called the play, and we scored, and we won. And those kids still talk about that. I got a couple that are coaching right now. Coach Kynes is down at Tracy Milroy. He sent me a radio interview when he brought that up and said, Coach came to the huddle and said, you guys call the play. And he said he did that with his team too. So ownership, it's their game. If they buy into it, then you've got the best of everything.
We talk a lot, John and I, between ourselves off air, about we need boundaries. Humans crave boundaries. They want discipline. Like you said that word discipline, and many of us hear the word discipline and we recoil because we think of some time when something bad happened, right? But we had a coach in college that used to say, pain of discipline or pain of regret, you choose. And I think that setup, that boundary is that place where it's, if you go past it, it's pain of regret. Okay. If you come right up against it, it's pain of discipline. That discipline is good and it's valuable, and we crave boundaries. Even me in my life at 35, I'm thinking, hey, I kind of got this thing figured out. We have the business, I have a daughter, life is good. And then it's like, I go past the boundary sometimes where I'm, watching football all day on a Sunday or something. I didn't get anything done. And now Monday comes, it's pain or regret, and it's little things like that we don't realize. These sort of all the things that, you're talking about with your athletes, they come back to you and say, 25, 30 years later, I still remember that thing. You gave us the freedom to be disciplined, to choose, to have accountability. I just think it's something so many coaches need to hear, right? Because we want to say, well, what if they don't? Okay, that's fine. Yeah. You're going to find the boundary line. Yep. And on either side, you're going to have a type of pain. And it's up to us to choose which one we want to go through. And that pain or regret, yeah, it's a learner. But pain and discipline, we might have an unbelievable outcome down the road. And I think those words, if there are young coaches listening or coaches out there that have struggled to build programs or to be successful, think about that ability to give accountability to our athletes and to give good, clear boundaries, because we're going to learn on either side of them. Without them, I don't know that we can.
Yep. Those are great points. That's, it's got to be clear expectations. The kids need to know, and the parents need to know. And right now with the new generation coming, they think, I don't want to use the word devil here, but I mean, they're so afraid of the parents. They will not do anything with them. And we had mothers meetings, that would show the equipment, now I know a good friend of mine, now the mothers come in, they do football drills, and the mothers love it, and once they find out about the game and all the safety things that are going on, it makes them feel a little bit better. So we used to have, mothers meeting, we met with the parents. We used to have on Thursday nights, we used to have the parent film night. We would watch one half of the game that we just played and watch our opponent. And then we would, talk about it. And some coaches was saying, aren't you opening yourself up for criticism? Yeah, I guess I am. And what do the parents say? We open up for a conversation and we talk, and there wasn't anything in there that really made me uncomfortable. But it was good because they saw what we were trying to do. At the end of the year, I remember Irv Peterson. I don't know if John, you remember him? He just passed away, former superintendent, one of the greatest guys I've ever met, one of the greatest Christians that I think have ever been out there. And so at the end of the year, we always do a survey of every football player and every coach, and every parent. And it was about our football program. And question number, I think it was number 14, said, should Coach Jeff Mumm remain the head football coach in Thief River Falls? Yes or no, and why? And when I first started doing it, I'd get them like, okay, what's this one going to say? What's this going to say? There was only one of all the years that I did it, then it wasn't signed. I said, if it isn't signed, we're going to put it in file 13. Well, I kept it because just in case, there's something on there, but I did keep it. So, but I remember, so then we type it all out. We sent it to all the school board members, all the administration, and of course, to the superintendent. He came over and he goes, are you crazy? And that was the first time I ever met him, personally. Like, and he goes, like, what are you talking about? He goes, nobody sends stuff like this out. And I'm like, if they don't want me to be the head football coach, then I'll get out. But I said some of the greatest changes that we ever made in our football program were because some parents had a different insight, or a mother saw something different that we should do. And it worked. And so we gave those people credit for that. And so there's that buy-in, like, this guy is asking us for input. He's asking us to be honest. And, that, like, I was point blank. I mean, we ran the tee. It isn't like the Elk River tee and the guy from Zealand West, that's a hybrid, and they're ball fakes. I thought we had good ball fakes. They're on another level. But so I remember one parent said, he goes, well, how come you take the quarterbacks to the Jeff Trickey quarterback leadership camp in grades 9 through 12? You do all the stuff with them. I said, because I want to get all their throwing done in the summer, because we're not going to throw in the fall. We're going to get it done in the summer. And I'm sure some of the parents were like, well, that's stupid. My son wants to throw the ball. Well, we didn't throw the ball a whole lot, and we didn't have to. But so yeah, those things. And again, I know I'm missing stuff about what we did with the parents, but that survey, I don't know if there hasn't been one coach in our district, and I said, do a survey. No, we're not doing that. I was like, why? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? And that's my question to all the teachers and coaches. What are you afraid of? I mean, if it's, it just helps us get better. Sometimes, that, being point blank, and sometimes we don't see things the way other people see it. And it's good to get that from other people. It helps tremendously.
So I think you kind of wrapped it up there, but the thing that I kept thinking was you have to put yourself out there in order to be willing and to get that feedback, right? You said, am I opening myself up for criticism? Yeah.
No.
That's the only way that you're going to grow, though, right? Otherwise, we have the potential to kind of get stuck in, this is how we do it, this is what we do. And then we develop blind spots. We had a podcast a few weeks ago where it was all about our blind spots, right? We get into these spaces where we just don't even see the things that the mother in the stands sees that can make us better. And I think that's so true. And, most of our time today, coach has been talking about, at least under the guise of talking about football, right? But I know you well enough to know that this carries over into your classroom, and all of the stuff that we talked about. And as coaches, we do because it's about life, and everything that you just said there too is true of business. If I have employees, how can I get them to buy in and to own, what we're doing and where we're going? How can I open myself to the feedback that I need to grow and get better every day? And it's just powerful stuff. And I really appreciate your time and sharing all your wisdom.
I could go on and on about other stuff too, with when our seniors select the most inspirational teacher in our district, and to see the teachers cry because we have a separate dinner banquet for them. Our senior banquet is just the senior parents of what our kids do. It's just a family thing. And at the end, I'm gonna leave you with one story, because this young man gets back to me every year. And if I go over my time limit, I'm sorry, but every time he gets a hold of me, I cry. And if I cried saying it right now, then so be it. But in 1995, we got beat by Detroit Lakes 21-20. And probably one of the best football games I was ever a part of. Whoever won that game was going to be the state champ. Then DL walked right through the state tournament. So we had a young man who moved into our district, didn't know much about him. It was a junior. And so after the game, we go through our senior handshake. That's always hard because, we've always lost the last game. We never were state champs, because we always line the seniors up and we shake hands and we cry and we hug and we do all this stuff. And so we got done at the Fargo Dome. We went into the locker room, and it was tough because we had a tremendous group of kids that did everything we asked them to do, and they just didn't. We lost 21-20. And this kid came up to me that I didn't know very well, and he goes, "Hey, coach, how you doing?" I'm like, I'm okay." I go, "Why is that?" And he goes, "You want to go play some catch?" I go, "What do you mean play catch?" He said, "You want to go out on the turf and play some catch?" And again, don't miss the moment. Why was he asking me that? I have no idea. Well, I do know. I said, "I'm going to do it." So we go out there and we're on the Fargo Dome, former quarterback, John, I'm throwing like 70, 80-yard passes to this kid. Not really, not wasn't that far. So we're playing catch, and my kids have always played catch. I played catch with my son and my daughter. So we're playing catch, and then we were the last game that night. The guys came over and said, "Coach, we're going to shut the lights off. You got to get off the field." And I said, "Okay." So we're walking through the tunnel, and he just stops, looks at me and says, Coach, thanks for playing catch." And I'm like, "Well, no, thank you. It was kind of refreshing, with the game and everything." "Oh, no." He goes, "You don't get it." I said, "Well, they're just playing catch." And he goes, "Well, I don't know where my dad is. I never got to play catch with my dad. And, so I got to play catch with you." So he gets a hold of me every fall. He didn't tell me that story yet. So that's what it's all about, is right there. Don't miss those moments. And we got so many new teachers and coaches who are missing them. So just a simple game of catch, and that kid remembers it still to this day. That's from 1995. So yeah, wow, okay. Thank you, guys. This has been wonderful, and yeah, like I said, I've got notes hanging all around me here on stuff, and it's been wonderful. So I can't thank you two enough for having me on here. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks for joining us, Coach.
You bet.
Thanks,
you,
Coach.
Yep.
Thanks again to Coach Jeff Mumm, Hall of Famer in the state of Minnesota, and incredible stuff. And I just think of his former players. I would have loved to play for him. I said in the interview I would have loved to coach with him. I think he just brings good juice. And that last story, the emotion that you can still feel from 1995, he thinks about it every year, right? And how many of those kids that he's coached has he impacted in a similar way that he doesn't hear about? And I think that's true of you out there listening too, is don't miss the moment, right? That's the challenge that he gave to us. And I think that's the challenge takeaway for me out of this conversation is don't miss the moment getting caught up, worried about the stuff that you have going on later on, the stuff that happened. Like, what about now? How can I make an impact now and stay in that thing, stay in the fight? Appreciate you guys listening. As always, check us out on social media. We are Eyes Up Mindset everywhere. And if you find value in this, share it, give it away. Find somebody that hasn't listened or hasn't listened in a while and say, hey, you know what? Check this out. It's good stuff. We appreciate you guys. We love you. And as always, live eyes up.